looking, throwing in the end zone.
Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussions, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today we're going to be talking 49ers training camp and a whole bunch of overreactions that are going on. The Darnold versus Lance fighting for the QB2 spot, why far too many fans out there confuse ability with talent, when Kyle Shanahan knew that Brock Purdy would be the starter in 2023, and we have a whole bunch of bad, really bad Twitter takes from supposed 49ers fans. In the plus section, we're going to be talking about Major League Baseball trade, specifically the New York Mets blowing up their roster and why I love it. I saw the movie Oppenheimer this past weekend. I want to give a review about that. Why Hollywood is learning some really bad lessons from Barbie's popularity and financial success. I'm going to review season 3 of The Witcher on Netflix. The Sean Payton, Nathaniel Hackett feud. I love it. I have some thoughts there. And Elon Musk, his X branding, the history of it, what it means, and why he is a big child. But like always, it starts with the 49ers, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
Before we jump into training camp news, just wanted to congratulate former 49er running back Roger Craig. Last week, he advanced as one of 12 senior candidates eligible for the Hall of Fame in 2024. As you may know, running back in the 80s for the 49ers, a 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Super Bowl champ, and the first running back to go 1,000 rushing and receiving yards. Only done twice since Marshall Faulk and Christian McCaffrey. So what happens next is the senior committee will meet on August 22nd and then may select up to 3 senior candidates for final consideration. So another step in the right direction, possibly or hopefully towards the Hall of Fame for Roger Craig. Now, training camp news and overreactions abound. Before we get into that, a couple quick things and things that you wanted to hope you get out of training camp without seeing injuries. And swing tackle Jalen Moore was hurt earlier on in the week. It was a leg injury. He was, depending on reports, he was either carted off or hobbled off on his own power. I saw both, it written up both ways. Matt Pryor is the only viable backup swing tackle on the roster. Remember, San Francisco opted not to draft a tackle with any of their picks. And beyond Matt Pryor, I don't like anybody else that's on the roster that could potentially serve in that role. And hopefully for Jalen Moore, it's nothing season-ending or really extensive. Maybe he'll be back in a week or two, but he's certainly a player that needs as many reps as he can get, and obviously an injury will take those reps away. One transaction to note, the 49ers signed former Cowboys first-round draft pick defensive end Taco Charlton and released safety Avery Young. Now, I like this move a lot. Why? Because it's another defensive end option. And I've said on previous podcasts how defensive end could be a position where they look to add a body. Now, Charlton wasn't a player that was on my radar. He is 27 or 28 years old. Been in the league since 2017. Was with the Cowboys. Was with the Chiefs. But another big, lengthy, long, athletic body that Coach Chris Kosurik can hopefully mold into a viable rotational piece. Now, worst case scenario, he's a camp body and gets released and maybe finds his way on the practice squad. But take a flyer. He's only signed to a 1-year deal, probably no guaranteed money. And it sounds like he made an impact during his first practice where he actually wound up sacking the quarterback and he won some one-on-one rep battles. Now, releasing, safety Avery Young, he was the 7th safety on the roster, an undrafted rookie free agent out of Rutgers. That leaves the 49ers with 6 safeties. They're probably going to keep 4. Outside possibility they keep 5. But for training camp and preseason, it would have made sense to me to keep a safety and release a wide receiver. They have 11 on the roster. Only 5, maybe 6 will make the final roster. Remember, cuts aren't going to happen until after the 3rd preseason game. So to have so much depth at receiver, a position that they generally go light on, and to not really have much depth, again, for training camp and preseason, it's safety, was curious. I'm nitpicking there, but I do like the addition of another, maybe not Taco Charlton specifically, but first-round talent, first-round draft pick. The knock on him coming out of Michigan was he doesn't turn it on all the time. He picks and chooses his moments. That doesn't work in the pros. If you're going to be going up against left and right tackles that are all-world players, Pro Bowlers or all-pros, you can't half-ass it. And hopefully Coach Crisora can get more out of him consistently where he's a viable option. And again, it just makes the decision difficult on Shanahan and the defensive staff regarding who to keep on the D-line, specifically at DN. Now, another defensive end, Clelin Ferrell, probably made the bonehead play of camp where quarterbacks aren't allowed to get hit. Now, you're generally really not doing too much hitting even when the pads are coming on in terms of skill position players, but quarterbacks specifically, it's a hands-off policy. And Clelin Ferrell wound up strip sacking Brock Purdy, which is essentially how he got hurt against the Eagles. Now, I don't know if the arm was up, in a 90-degree position, about ready to throw, the way he got hurt against Philadelphia, but it did draw the ire of Kyle Shanahan, specifically because it was Purdy, but you don't hit quarterbacks in practice, in training camp. Clelin Ferrell, you got to do better. And it sounds like you're not having a great training camp on top of that, so get your head out of your ass. You can start making plays, just know you have to peel off if you're coming up on the quarterback. So let's get into training camp thoughts and overreactions. Where are we as of this recording? It's day 6 of training camp. So 4 days of no pads, 2 days of practices with pads. I am not giving you numbers. I'm not giving you completion percentages, attempts, completions, touchdowns. Why? It does not matter. It's practice. Now, I know Shanahan puts more emphasis on training camp and practices than he does preseason games, but it's so early in camp, guys. Everybody's shaking off the rust, especially the offense. The way the offense started out sputtering in camp, it got a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of moronic fans worried. But at this point in the season, in training camp, the defense basically for every team is well ahead of the offense, right? You're installing offensive plays, and a team like San Francisco, who plays a cover 3 more often than not, have they shown pressure? Have they blitzed? Have they give quarterbacks different looks during these 6 practices? Sure. But you're talking about a talent-laden defense, even without Nick Bosa on the field, the number 1 defense in the league, or the top 2 defense in the league the past several years. Offense was going to struggle. Different combinations of quarterback and skill position players, different offensive lines. It's okay, guys. It's okay. And the offense seems to have picked it up a bit since the pads have come on. But that's why these are called practices. It doesn't even matter in the preseason, guys. It's not going to matter until September 10th. All you want to do, you want to install your offense. You want to show some efficiency at it. But if the Niners offense was carving up the defense, then what does that say? Then people are going to be shitting themselves that the defense isn't playing well. And see, Steve Wilkes isn't D'Amico Ryans or Robert Saleh. It's going to be a step. You can't win. How do you win if every quarterback goes 8 for 10 but doesn't throw a touchdown? Like, I have no idea. You can't please everybody all the time. All I do know is people are taking far too much out of these practices. Really, really are. Now, Brock Purdy, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, per Shanahan, per Lynch, he will be throwing for 2 days and then taking 2 days off. And Brock Purdy started out slow when he started practicing. Was he rusty? Of course he was rusty. He hasn't thrown a football in any sort of simulated practice situation since he hurt his elbow in the NFC Championship game. He hasn't had the chances and the reps that that Trey, that Sam, and Brandon Allen have had in OTAs and minicamp. And even though those are like training camp light, you don't really have, in some cases, you don't have all your veterans out there, but you're still throwing. There's still reps. He hasn't thrown that way until training camp started. Would we and should we expect him to be rusty? Absolutely. We should expect any quarterback or any player to be rusty after X amount of time and 40 days away between mandatory minicamp and training camp. What the hell? But under the microscope, anybody that's a Trey fan or a Purdy hater, and there's far too many of them out there, you should be 49er fans, guys. Should be 49er fans. Fan of whoever wins the QB1 job, which will probably be Brock Purdy. Be a fan of the team, not a specific position group or player. And we're going to get into that in a little bit as well. Now, what fans are complaining about? Snap distribution between the 4 quarterbacks, including Brandon Allen. Now, Brandon Allen is getting 3 to 5 throws per practice. I don't think if Brandon Allen wasn't here and it was just the 3 quarterbacks, but remember, Purdy is off every 3rd and 4th day, technically. So when Purdy's not throwing, that means more snap for the other quarterbacks. And when Purdy's not, if Brandon Allen wasn't here, you would have multiple days throughout training camp where you only have 2 quarterbacks. Do some teams do that and only carry 3? Yeah, sure. Is it doable? Sure. And a lot has been made about why is Shanahan keeping Brandon Allen around? Could he like Brandon Allen more than Trey Lance and cut Trey Lance? No. Listen, I have no say in the decision-making of who gets cut and whatnot. And I have no real dog in the fight on who I want to be the starting quarterback, although I just think it's logical based on how he played last season that Brock Purdy is the starter. You can't take being undefeated away from him. Maybe Shanahan wants to see what he has in Allen. If on the off chance a team, say Cincinnati, they had a scare with Joe Burrow. He practiced he had a sprained ankle and then went down in minicamp and people were holding their breath. I'm not a sprained ankle. He had like a pulled calf or calf irritation, went down in practice and people were actually comparing it to Kevin Durant's injury when he was with the Warriors, had, a pulled calf or a calf strain. Then during the finals, wound up tearing his Achilles. It wasn't an Achilles rupture, and Burrow will be back in a couple weeks, which is great. But that would have been the situation where maybe the Bengals, would reach out to the 49ers and see if Trey Lance is available via trade. Because that's a team that's ready to win now. And the backup quarterbacks on the roster, Brandon Allen was one of them. Maybe they would have traded for Brandon Allen. But unless something significant happens, Trey Lance is going to be on the team, guys. It's just a matter of, is he going to be QB2 or QB3? I just don't think he's going to be QB1. I don't hate him. I have nothing against Lance. And what did I say in previous podcasts? I wanted this regime to draft him over Mac Jones and Justin Fields. So I wanted him here. I just had the clear eyes and the mental aptitude to understand that in no way, shape, or form was he going to be ready in year 1. Far too many fans did not think that. Far too many fans had the mentality of, well, you don't trade all those picks and sit them. If you traded up all those picks and you got Trevor Lawrence, maybe you play him. If you traded up all those picks and you got Zach Wilson, maybe you still, in hindsight, maybe you don't play him. But again, this was a team that was win now. Are you going to tell me even Trevor Lawrence is going to come in and play better than a Jimmy Garoppolo, a veteran? I don't think that. So the Brandon Allen as QB4, they're getting as all the quarterbacks as many reps as they can. And again, with Brock Purdy not practicing every day, that has a mathematical trickle-down effect to Trey Lance, to Sam Darnold, and to Brandon Allen. They're getting everybody ready. And if somebody throws the bag at 49ers in terms of a draft pick or two or a player for Trey Lance or Brandon Allen, they're not going to trade Sam Darnold. They're not going to trade someone that they signed day one of free agency. Let's get that out of everybody's head. Why not? Why not see what you have? And if nobody offers anything, and Brandon Allen is able to just go right on the practice squad. If he remains on the team and final cuts, they waive Brandon Allen, he does not go through waivers. So he could just end up right on the practice squad. That'll be his decision. Maybe another team does want him because there's a significant pay difference between practice squad and active roster, but he doesn't have to go through waivers, which is big. When John Lynch said, we might keep 4 quarterbacks, and I said it last podcast, 3 on the active roster, 1 on the practice squad, probably or potentially Brandon Allen. Now, conspiracy theorists, also known as morons on Twitter, we're going to get into that a little bit more, complaining that Trey is not playing with McCaffrey or Kittle or other starters as much as he should. Guess what, guys? He's not QB1. And if you're not QB1, you don't play with the starters as much as QB1 does. But then the conspiracy is even deeper, and that McCaffrey and Kittle purposely sit when Brock's out. And it's not a coincidence in these people's minds that McCaffrey, Kittle, and Brock are all white and Trey's not. And there are Twitter scumbags that are making this a racial black versus white issue. I heard because I'm not listening, I'm reading stuff on Twitter. A person of color actually used KKK to describe fans or media members that are white, whether or not they're even pulling for Brock Purdy. That's where we're getting to. America 2023. Terrible. It's a bad take. It's a racist take. You can't tell me if you're dropping KKK in a sentence that's not racist. I don't care, black, brown, person, whoever you are. If you're saying that, dude, you're a racist. And media coverage, and it dovetails into this. I've seen people complain that the 49ers journalists, the people that are covering the team, are too white. And one of the quotes was, San Francisco is a really diverse area. Obviously a lot of, Asian Americans there, West Coast. The team is diverse, the city is diverse, but the media members are not. They're all white. And that's skewing the coverage of Purdy, Allen, and Darnold, because they're white, versus how they're covering Trey Lance. Are you serious? Are you serious? And from what I understand, listen, people of color who are complaining about this, if you live in the Bay Area and you're a Twitter hero or think you have a good take and you follow the team, you know about the team, it's not hard to get credentialed. Start writing for a specific news outlets that have decent readership or viewership, and you will get credentialed. I know someone I used to work with that lives on the West Coast now. I don't think he's credentialed anymore, but was at press conferences when Jim Harbaugh was the head coach. It can be done. If there's a reason why people of color are not journalists or media members, it's because they're not going into it. Do you think there's a big fence outside of the 49ers practice facility that says people of color not allowed? Brown journalists don't bother? Are you kidding me? They're not excluding anybody. It just happens to be that, one, the country is made up of primarily white people. And mathematically, that's going to mean you have a better chance of white people being really any job in the country outside of NBA players, right? Media members included, journalists included. It's just happenstance. Are they covering the quarterbacks any differently or have any vendetta against them? No. What I do find ridiculous, and if anybody black, brown, green, yellow, purple, aliens, animals, plant life, rocks that have opinions about the quarterbacks or want to have opinions about the quarterbacks, I still find it funny how there are journalists that math isn't their strong suit. It seems like everybody has a different completions and attempts rating for the quarterbacks across the board. I don't know, guys. Any media members listening to this? I don't know. If I'm watching a practice, I should be able to count up to like 10 because that's really the number of attempts a quarterback is getting and then figure out how many passes they're completing. There does seem to be variability there. I agree because I've seen it. Twitter, articles, websites, I've seen it. That confuses me. But people of color, it's not a conspiracy. You're embarrassing yourselves. You're better than that. Don't play the race card just because your preferred quarterback is not elevated the way you want him to be. And a lot of us out there may the best quarterback win. You're better than that, guys. The race card's weak. The race card is weak. Now, a lot of people out there saying, well, Trey Lance should certainly beat out Sam Darnold. I'm one of them. I want to see Trey Lance as the number 2 quarterback. And I made it clear last podcast. If you didn't listen, here's the reason why. It gives the RPO life in the 49ers playbook. What do I mean by that? They could have certain packages for Trey Lance to come in. Now that he's more seasoned as a passer, teams will have to respect the pass more than they would have his rookie year when he was coming in a handful of times, however many times he actually came in for Garoppolo when Garoppolo was healthy and on the field. More of a respect now for throwing the ball, but having the run there, whether it's an RPO, whether it's an actual pass, breaks down, he takes off with his legs. That's a good option to have as part of the offensive arsenal, but in a backup quarterback. If Trey Lance is the 3rd quarterback, the emergency number 3, he can only come in if quarterbacks 1 and 2 are hurt and cannot return to the game. So if nothing else, that's why I want Lance as number 2. But experience matters, and for everybody that's calling for Lance to get more reps and this, that, other thing, cool. Totally fine. But let's look at the reps historically between Darnold and Lance. In the pros, Darnold has played in 56 games, 1,765 pass attempts. Lance in 4 games, 102 pass attempts. Kind of a big difference, right? No matter what kind of math you use, that's a big difference. College, Darnold at USC, 27 games, 846 pass attempts. Lance, 19 games, 318 pass attempts. Sam Darnold has had seasons in both the NFL and in college where he has attempted more passes in one season than Trey Lance has throughout his collegiate and NFL career. It matters. I don't think anybody can definitively say right now Trey Lance is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. More familiar with Shanahan's offense? Yes. Trey Lance better be more familiar with Kyle Shanahan's offense, this being year 3 that he's in it. But there's, for anyone to automatically say, well, Darnold's trash. Lance is going to be better than him. And Shanahan came out, and I think, I don't want to say he made the mistake, but he made the comment of, well, why can't Sam Darnold be another Steve Young? He was in a bad situation in Tampa, bad team, floundering, comes to the 49ers, coaching weapons, excels, obviously wins a Super Bowl, Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame. I don't think we're going to go that far with Sam Darnold at all, but you put any quarterback that has some talent in a better situation with better coaching and more talent, do they have a better chance to succeed? Yes. Is the Steve Young comparison a bit blue sky? Yes. Do I understand what he means by it? Yes. Objectively, which I know is tough for a lot of people. But also, let's just go back to Trey Lance. This isn't a pile on Trey Lance thing. If anybody out there that's a Lance fan, awesome. I'm a Lance fan too. I just think Purdy makes more sense as the starter. You can't take away Purdy's 8 games undefeated that he played the majority of the snaps and finished. But I think with Trey Lance, fans are confusing ability and talent. Ability is purely the tools that you have, the potential that you have, whether it's having a big arm, being able to run like Lance does, whether it's being able to process things quickly, which it looks like Brock Purdy can do, throwing with anticipation, throwing with touch. Those are abilities that players have. Talent is putting it all together into something that's understandable on the field, something that's tangible. Ability is the ingredients. Talent is the meal. Another example that I'll give, I worked at a startup several years ago, startup agency, and we touted that we had all these capabilities. It's the word abilities, but it's a more professional sounding way of saying we have all these capabilities. We can do A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z. And that was true. We had the capabilities to do that. But if you don't have talent in those capabilities, it doesn't matter. And the motto at any startup is fake it until you make it. But you can lose business that way. Don't tell me you can do X, Y, and Z. Tell me that you can do X, Y, and Z well, right? I have fists. I can punch. I'm agile. I have the ability to land a punch on Floyd Mayweather's face. Is it ever going to happen? No, because I don't have the talent to. Does Lance have the higher ceiling? Maybe. And you know what? Maybe it's actually safer to say that he has the higher floor than Brock Purdy because of how raw he still is. He didn't throw a lot of passes at North Dakota State, guys. That was a running team. I think in the championship game that he won, he only threw the ball like a dozen times. That was not a wing it around offense. That was very much a run-based offense. Does he have the ability to throw the ball well? It's there. And I know a lot of people jump on him for working on touch passes, and he has tightened his delivery and a lot of things that he does need to work on. All quarterbacks do, but someone with 420 career pass attempts in college and now his third year in the pro, yeah, I would say he's got a lot to work on. But I also said last podcast that the NFL is littered with quarterbacks, big arms that can run, that have the potential. Anthony Richardson on the Colts, I bear him no ill will. Would any of us be shocked if he's a flop? No. Started one season at Florida State. Yeah, he can run. Big guy built like Cam Newton. The difference was Cam Newton was the best player at Auburn, and he won the Heisman Trophy and national championship. Number one pick in the draft. Anthony Richardson was shit at Florida State. And he was still a top 5, top 7 pick? Because people are tantalized by ability, but if you can't put it together and synthesize it into actual talent on the field, it doesn't matter. And just remember, for what this is worth, Brock Purdy has won more playoff games with the 49ers than Trey Lance has won regular season games. For what that is worth. Now, let's get to something interesting that Kyle Shanahan said in an interview with Tim Kawakami. This is when Kyle Shanahan knew that Purdy would be the starter in 2023 before the injury against Philadelphia. Quote, the second Seattle game, that's when I knew we had a dude because of how good he had played, I think, the 2 weeks prior. But that game, I think he had broken ribs from a Sunday. The Seahawks game was Thursday. I remember when he took his shot in pregame warmups, he couldn't throw because it was still hurting in that area. So he's going to the locker room, and I'm sitting there going over the openers, and I still don't know whether he can throw or not as they're waiting for the shot to kick in. So I'm about to go with Josh Johnson, who's been here for like a week or 2 days. But Brock's like, no, I think I can do it. And then watching him in that game, knowing how hurt he was, and watching how he just managed it on Thursday Night Football, and some of the plays he made to move the chains on 3rd and 1, and at the end, scrambling, I knew he had a dude who was made up the right way, who could handle the pressure and stuff. And we'd seen what he does as a player in practice in the games, but it was more the makeup. And then just hang with him from then on out. It was proven he got stronger with it. Now, he's not saying, nor am I going to say or insinuate that just because Brock toughed out a broken rib, or ribs plural, which is still pretty damn impressive, that he should be the starter over Trey Lance or Sam Darnold. No. Is that a check mark in his corner in Shanahan and Lynch's eyes? Yeah. But they clinched the division in that game, beating Seattle in Seattle, a game I picked the 49ers to lose. I picked them to lose that game and the Dolphin game when Jimmy got hurt and Darnold came in. What do I know? What do any of us know? Toughness is one attribute of being a quarterback. Why? Because you're going to get hit. And generally, you're one of the smallest people on the field. And you're getting hit by super big dudes. You're getting landed on by super heavy dudes when you're getting sacked. Toughness matters. And you combine that with his pocket awareness, his accuracy, his anticipation, his escapability, his moxie. Moxie matters. How many times have you heard or said to someone, it just looks like he has it. It looks like he has it. Looks like Brock has it. Does it look like Trey has it? In any of the times that you've started, it looked like Brock had, quote unquote, it his rookie year. Trey didn't look like that at all. He looked like a goddamn mess against the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the first half against the Texans. Again, I'm not a Trey hater. I'm just telling you objectively, facts, how Shanahan and Lynch might be looking at things. Now, more facts, bad Twitter takes. Thank you, Twitter. Now, it's a platform I have a love-hate relationship with. I like to be on it to just spread the news of the 49ers Plus podcast. You know, I post once a day, and then I'll retweet something later on in the day. And then I like to, doom scroll down and just see what, fans are saying, some journalists that I follow. But by and large, if the old adage is true that you can't talk to people about religion and politics, throw sports in there. Throw your specific favorite sports team in there or player. Man, 49er Twitter is a mess, but it is the gift that keeps on giving because there's no shortage of morons. There's no shortage of idiots. And you're going to say, hey, Al, why is it a moron? Why is that stupid take? Why is he an idiot? Because he disagrees with you? Yeah. Yeah. Because I know I'm a pretty smart dude. Am I the smartest in the bunch? No. But I know I'm a pretty level-headed guy, pretty objective, right? The passion comes out during the games. The yelling, the cheering, the screaming, the throwing, that comes out during the games. But when I'm sitting down analyzing something, doing research, speaking about it, it comes from a pretty objective spot. But this segment now, I have three options here. I can call this bad Twitter takes, very straightforward. 49ers Twitter twats, which I think is very fitting. Or 49ers Twidiots. So we're combining Twitter with idiots, which I think is nice too. Now, I know the Twitter twats one might be harsh, but Merriam-Webster's dictionary does have the two following definitions. Either one, a woman's sexual organs in a vulgar way, or a stupid or annoying person. So there is actual credence and definition to how we are using the word twats. So three different options. Maybe I'll have one decided next week. But here I have, I think, seven bad Twitter takes. So we'll just go with 49ers Twidiots. The first, perhaps Shanny is rushing Brock Purdy's rehab along. No moron. You know why? Because he was cleared by his doctor. He was actually cleared without restrictions. And it's the 49ers, Lynch, Shanahan, and the medical team who put in this self-imposed 2 days practice, 2 days off. So no, they are not rushing his rehab along. Same Twitter idiot. Or perhaps Shanny has no clue what Brock is, so he wants him out there earlier than usual. So that's a two-part moronic statement. Has no clue what Brock is. No. I just read you two big quotes from an article that Shanahan knows exactly what Brock is. Makeup-wise, mentality, and toughness. And they see him in practice every day, in addition to 8+ games. They know exactly what he is. And he wants him out there earlier than usual. Just shot down the earlier than usual. If you're on Twitter this much, moron, why don't you just go on other 49er websites and read some stuff? Read what the coaches are saying. Read about what's happening out there. And of course, the conspiracy theorists can say, well, the coaches are lying to you. The bad white devil media members are lying to you. I don't know what to tell you then. You're going to live in your own echo chamber of stupidity, and you could probably drown, in a wading pool. Another Twitter twat, quote, the relationship between Trey and the 49ers hasn't improved. It's probably even taken steps back. So now again, Trey was drafted to sit the whole year. That's been documented many times. Trey Lance was gifted the starting quarterback position last offseason, 2022. Jimmy came back as the backup, a heavily incentive-laden deal. And Lance got hurt game 2. It sucks. Life sucks sometimes. I said it before. And Brock stepped in and played like a champ. It sucks. Timing and luck in life are a lot of things. Bad timing, bad luck that Lance got injured and Brock stepped in and played as well as he did. Another quote. And as usual, McCaffrey just happens to be off on another day when Trey's out there. Shaking my head. Shaking my head because I know you're insinuating racism. Because you think, well, McCaffrey is off when Brock is off. Well, McCaffrey's a veteran, so veterans get days off. And I know you're making this a black versus white thing, but remember, Trey Lance is not the starter. And it's not because Trey Lance is black. It's because he's just not the starter. He's battling for the number 2 spot. Brock Purdy's the starter. So mathematically, he's probably going to get more opportunities with a Kittle, with a McCaffrey, with the number 1 line, with the Debo, with an Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, whatever it may be. Another Twittiot. Trey is not fighting for the QB1 spot. He's fighting not to get cut. This is a doom and gloom person. A moron, to be sure, but a doom and gloom person. He is not getting cut. If Shanahan and Lynch actually cut Trey Lance, then I have a big problem with management and that decision. It's not going to happen. Traded, maybe, but he is not playing to get cut. And when this moron was questioned, not by me, because I don't have the energy to engage with idiots. That's why I love working from home. I just have less people to deal with on a daily basis. Not saying that my coworkers are idiots, but I just have a higher probability of running into an idiot the more I deal with human beings. And Twitter is just so ripe with them. He's not going to get cut. And his response, excuse me, I got off on a tangent. His response to someone else who challenged him on that was, well, every player out there is fighting to not get cut. Oh, really? Trent Williams fighting to not get cut? Debo? Fred Warner? Are they fighting to not get cut? Travarius Ward? Is he fighting to not get cut? Come on. You said something stupid, just fess up with it. Think before you hit send, morons. Okay, and then what else do we have? Another Twitter twat. Quote, some people who say Kyle will pick the best quarterback this season conveniently ignore the fact that Kyle had Brock Purdy as QB3 to start the 2022 season. Now, this moron is insinuating that Kyle had Brock Purdy last year. Why didn't he anoint him as the starting quarterback last offseason, 2022, when Trey Lance was on the roster and Jimmy Garoppolo? What? At that point, he was the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, 7th round pick. They had gifted the starting job to Trey Lance. Jimmy came back as an insurance policy. Brock stuck on the roster and they released Nate Sudfeld instead. So yes, they liked what they had in Brock as a developmental prospect, but in no way, because Brock played this well, should anyone think, well, why didn't Shanahan see it in July of 2022 and why didn't they make him the starter? That's what this moron is insinuating. A Trey fan, a Lance homer. Are you kidding me? This is the stupidity we're dealing with on social media. Niners Twitter. Again, it's a love-hate. Thank you for all these dumb takes I get to talk about and shoot down on my podcast. But my God, your stupidity is annoying, exhaustingly dumb. And lastly, quote, black representation matters and how Lance is being covered is due to a lack of black representation, meaning among media members. Come on, man. The race card is weak. Pulling the race card in this situation is like having an argument with someone that's a flat earther, that's an anti-vaxxer. It's not only the race card, but it's the Trump card. Because what can someone really say that's going to change your mind? What is someone really going to tell a flat earther or an anti-vaxxer that are going to ignore science and change their mind? This one might be a little bit more of a slippery slope, because if people are saying the media members are mainly white or all white, and I know there are some Indian reporters, there may be some Hispanic reporters, but what are we going to say that's going to change your mind other than representation being more equaled out? Then you know what? Here's my response to you. Encourage more people of color to become journalists. Because again, there's no sign at the gates that says brown people not allowed. And that concludes the 49ers section of the podcast for today. Stick around. We are going to be talking the New York Mets blowing up their roster. Why I love it. I'm going to review the movie Oppenheimer, season 3 of The Witcher on Netflix. Why Barbie's box office success is making Hollywood learn all the wrong lessons. The Sean Payton, Nathaniel Hackett feud. I love it. And why Elon Musk rebranding Twitter as X means he is just a big immature child. Stay right here.
It's plus time.
So let's start out with some baseball. The New York Mets meet the mess, greet the mess. What an absolute disaster for such a free spending team. And even though Stevie Cohen has proven that his pockets are deeper than a porn star's throat, it is not showing up in the win column. As of this recording, the Mets are 50-57. On track for what? 70, 73 wins maybe. And by far, their payroll was the highest in Major League Baseball, over $300 million. It's not a Mets problem, though, too. Look at the Yankees. They're hovering around 500. The Padres spent a ton of money, hovering around 500. Like we've always said, spending money doesn't guarantee you anything. It should give you a better chance or possibility of fielding a better team, because theoretically you have more talent, but it is not the case, and the Mets decided to blow it up at the trade deadline, and I absolutely love it. Now, I am a Mets fan. I say that lightly because I really don't watch many Mets games at all, but if I've been historically a Mets fan since I've been younger, but it started out on July 28th when they dealt reliever David Robinson to the Marlins for second baseman Marco Vargas and catcher Ronald Hernandez. They went with youth there. So 18 years old, 19 years old, the two prospects. Robertson in his mid to late 30s. 14 saves and 44 innings pitched, 4-2 with a 2.05 ERA. All well and good. But again, the team stinks, and this caused Matt Scherzer to question what was going on. And what was going on was Max Scherzer being dealt next on July 30th. Scherzer, 38 years old, and cash, went to the Texas Rangers for shortstop Luis Angel Acuna. Scherzer, a down year by his standards, 9-4, a 4.01 ERA. This isn't a complete salary dump for the Mets. The Rangers are paying $22.5 million of the remainder of his contract, which includes the 2024 option that Scherzer opted into. So one big name but old pitcher gone. Now let's move to the outfield. On the 31st of July, left fielder Mark Hanna and cash went to the Brewers for right-handed pitcher Justin Jarvis, 23 years old, 6-4, 3.33 ERA in Double-A. Canna's 34 years old, was batting .245 this year and 6 home runs. Trying to dump as much salary as they could, even though, again, like when it comes to Scherzer, when we were going to get to Justin Verlander, they're not picking up everything. but they are clearing the deck for next year, and it didn't stop. So the day of the trade deadline, August 1st, Justin Verlander went back to the Astros for outfielder Drew Gilbert and outfielder Ryan Clifford. Verlander, 40 years old, better as of late, but overall this year for the Mets, 6-5 with a 3.15 ERA. Gilbert and Ryan, 22 and 20 years old, respectively, showing some power in the minors and some base running ability also. But again, look at the theme: youth, prospects. Later on August 1st, center fielder Tommy Pham and Cash went to the Arizona Diamondbacks for shortstop Jeremy Rodriguez. Pham, 35 years old, hitting .268 and 10 home runs. Later in the day, pitcher Dominic Leone and Cash went to the Angels for shortstop Jeremiah Jackson. Leone, 31, 1-3 and a 4.4 ERA. Jackson, 23 years old, and Rodriguez, the trade before, 17 years old. And lastly, because they got rid of Scherzer and Verlander, they needed to bring in some pitchers to field a rotation. So they purchased pitchers Phil Bickford and Adam Kolarek from the Dodgers for cash. Bickford, 28 years old, 2-3 on the year, 5.14 ERA. And Kolarek, 34, only pitched 1.1 innings this year and 2 strikeouts. Not like they're going to be starters, but they did need to replenish the pitching staff somewhat given what they gave up. Now, I love it. Like I said, this is a 50-win team right now. What are they going to max out at? 70, 72, 73 wins. The worst thing you could be in any sport is expensive and mediocre. That's just a ticket to going nowhere. Right? You're in sports purgatory for a while. So the Mets, are we going to say that they got better? Is this going to improve the product on the field this year? No, absolutely not. And there's no reason for any Met fan to go to a Met game between now and the end of the year, unless you can get tickets for, $5 and someone to take you to Citi Field. But they're going young. They cleared some salary. They're still a top 3 salary team in Major League Baseball. But are they clearing the decks for Shohei Ohtani? Maybe, because it's been proven that Steve Cohen will spend, and he would be the most logical thing to spend on a starting pitcher and a big bat. But we'll see if the Angels entice him to stay since they didn't move him at the deadline, or what other teams are going to throw their hat in the ring financially for him. So from baseball, let's talk movies. I went to see Oppenheimer with my wife over the weekend. Let's just start off broad strokes. It was a good movie. It was a really good movie, and I can see it winning Best Picture, Best Director, Best Lead Actor, and Best Supporting Actor with Robert Downey Jr. Now, it's an interesting film from a structure standpoint because the framing of the movie is Robert Oppenheimer basically not in front of a jury, but he's at some sort of a meeting where his motives were being questioned, his allegiance to a communist party. He's essentially trying to be discredited by a board that is looking to not renew his security clearance. So he wouldn't be working for the government anymore. He would still, I guess, be employed by Princeton or wherever he's wind up working after World War II. But it chronicles his early years, as a student, what really captivates him about energy, atomic energy, fusion, fission, etc. And then obviously being brought into the mix as part of the Manhattan Project in New Mexico to develop the atomic bomb, because they've heard that either the Germans or the Russians might be ahead of themselves, but they learned, the teachings, the education that they're using is not what the Americans, led by Oppenheimer, are doing. So they feel like they can get a leg up. And historically, you know how this ends, right? They develop the bomb, they test it, they drop one on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And apparently Oppenheimer had input in terms of what the target or targets could potentially be in Japan. Then there's some discussion about, was Japan on the verge of surrendering? Should they have dropped the bomb? Which again, lessons from history. And then after becoming the hero, Oppenheimer soon after becomes the villain. And it's really based on jealousy and a petty nature of one of the other characters in the movie, trying to discredit him, trying to go after his mental state. Why is he feeling remorse when they were trying to develop a hydrogen bomb years later versus an atomic bomb? Very interesting. Again, a very good movie, and I can see it. I don't know about sweeping the Academy Awards when it comes around, but winning at least, I think, in the major categories. The one thing about the movie, and I've said this about other movies, it's a 3-hour movie, so to me it felt 20 to 30 minutes too long. It had a satisfying conclusion. And it kind of took a page from another one of Christopher Nolan's films. I forget which one of the Batman movies, when somebody said, whether it was Batman or Commissioner Gordon, sometimes you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's unfortunately what happened to Oppenheimer, at least in this depiction. And I know it was based on a novel written about him. But a really good movie. If you're curious about it and want to see it, it is a really well-made film. You're going to feel the 3 hours. Even though I'm not an Avatar super fan, Avatar didn't feel like a 3-hour movie. This feels like a 3-hour movie. Now let's just stick with movies for a second. Barbie still ripping it up, overseas, worldwide. I think it's at $750 million globally. I don't think it's going to get to $1 billion, but at this point, Mattel doesn't care, because its opening weekend, it wound up becoming profitable. And because of that, Mattel, the toy company, is looking to leverage some of their products, some of their IPs, intellectual properties. So it's been announced that there's going to be a gritty take on Hot Wheels, the toy cars, made by J.J. Abrams, which makes sense because he doesn't really do anything original. He just redoes stuff. But more curiously, Lena Dunham, who created the HBO show Girls that was on and highly acclaimed several years ago, wants to create a movie based on Mattel's Polly Pocket toys. I thought Polly Pocket was a fad that was around like in the, I don't know if it was like the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s. You can still buy Polly Pocket toys, and what they basically are really small characters, really small toys, figures, rooms, accessories that can fit in your pocket. And this is something apparently that Lena Dunham was obsessed with when she was younger and has, a soft spot in her heart for. So a script apparently is written, and apparently it's been okayed by Mattel and whoever the production company is that's going to pick it up. But it's just curious. And this is, anytime you taste success as a toy company, as a production company, director, whatever, then now you're in the mode of let's throw as much shit against the wall and see what sticks. Hot Wheels, racing, Fast and Furious. We'll see how the Gran Turismo movie does. I could see that having an appeal. Is that to say that no one's going to see the Polly Pocket movie? No, I'm sure there will be girls that'll go see it. But Barbie is a multi-generational icon. Polly Pocket, yeah, it's been around 25, 30 years maybe, but it's obviously not on the same level as Barbie. And to make a movie out of it, hey, listen, if you can make it for $25 million and Lily Collins has been attached as one of the leads, famously of Emily in Paris, you got to make this for cheap to turn any sort of profit, right? It's not, Margot Robbie, there's no Ryan Gosling, and I'm sure it's not going to be, the visual spectacle that Barbie is. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean from a special effects or sets and cost standpoint, but the fact that a Polly Pocket movie is being made has Barbie and only Barbie to thank, but also some folks at Mattel that aren't thinking very clearly. But again, if they can make it cheap enough, it could probably turn a profit. So moving from movies to TV. I recently finished season 3, the most recent season of Netflix's The Witcher, a highly divisive show among Witcher fans, and that's actually putting it nicely. The Rotten Tomatoes scores, interestingly enough, season 1 was not liked by, critics as much, 68%, but fans really liked it. Season 2 for critics went up to 95%. The score for the audience dipped from season 1, and season 3 was the lowest score for audiences, but did come in at 77% for critics. Now, what does this ultimately mean? It means that if you are not a super fan of The Witcher, you will enjoy this show. Even a 68% Rotten Tomato score isn't terrible. If you want to average out the 3 seasons, you're talking about, maybe high 70%, low 80s, which isn't bad. Now, I've never read a Witcher book. I have Witcher 3 Wild Hunt as a video game, still have not played it, and that is not a referendum on the TV show. I just haven't gotten a chance to play it yet. It is an entertaining fantasy show. Is it the level of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon? No. Is it better than Wheel of Time? Yes. Is it better than Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power? I didn't have as much problem with Rings of Power as a lot of people do, especially the super fans. But like anything else, and I can relate to this given, my Star Wars fandom, I'm more critical of Star Wars, any shows, any movies that comes out, because of not how many times I've watched the movies, although that's part of it, but how much I've read comic books and novels and understand what the prequel movies could have been, or specifically the sequel movies, what they could have been and were not. So it's disappointing. So I understand people that have read the books, because these seasons 1, 2, and 3 are based on the books, why people have problems with the deviations from the books, how the seasons actually jump around between multiple books. It's not that season 1 of The Witcher follows the first book or season 2 following the second book. It jumps around. And it was actually funny because I read something last night that one of the showrunners or someone associated with the show was blaming the audience. I don't know if it was the American audience or the audience in general for why things had to be dumbed down or changed for the TV script, because they thought the general audience would not get some of the nuances in the books. And you know what? They're right. If there's a lot that we could say about TV and movies, dumbing down for the general audience is important. Nothing is made for the super fans. Whether it's Avatar, Star Trek, Star Wars, Matrix, Witcher, Lord of the Rings, if you're a super fan, generally you're going to be disappointed. Or chances are, I would bet, you're going to be more disappointed than you are over the moon about it. And that's okay. That's totally okay. But I'm figuring that folks in the audience listening are not Witcher super fans, and I think it's an enjoyable series. This 3rd season, it was an 8-episode season, same as the first 2 seasons. Netflix released the first 5 episodes on June 29th, and the last 3 were released on July 27th. And if you're not aware, Henry Cavill is the title character of The Witcher, Geralt of Rivia, the hero, the anti-hero, essentially a monster hunter who is also kind of sees himself as a white knight and tries to not get involved in things, but is swept up in this story of Freya Allen, who is Ciri. She is a princess, someone that The Witcher saved and is protecting from different factions on the continent that are trying to kill her for different reasons. Another one of the stars, Anya Chalotra, is Yennefer, who's a mage, essentially a witch. Was bad in the first couple seasons, good in this season. And Joey Beatty plays lighthearted, humorous Jaskier, who is a bard, basically a traveling musician, who is The Witcher's friend and sidekick, in an interesting dichotomy between Henry Cavill, who talks in a grumble like Christian Bale's Batman, and there's nothing comedic about him, and Joey Beatty really is the comic relief. So, I mean, again, straightforward story, protecting a princess Ciri, and now this season it's Henry Cavill, not so much, but the Yennefer witch character trying to teach Ciri to use her magic, her powers. And she's, one of those could become all powerful and all good as a queen or all bad and destroy the continent, etc. This is Henry Cavill's last season as The Witcher. He's going to be replaced by Liam Hemsworth, who is Chris and Luke Hemsworth's younger brother. Liam was in the Hunger Games trilogy and in the Independence Day sequel. I'm sure fans are upset about that. I thought Henry Cavill was awesome. Henry Cavill, Superman, for those of you who don't know who he is, played a really good Witcher, just dark, brooding, had that air about him. And I'm sure Liam Hemsworth will do an adequate job or a beyond adequate job as well. One final thing that was interesting, though, about this show, one of the showrunners or casting directors mentioned that the actress who plays Yennefer, Anya Chalotra, was cast because that person wanted to challenge common norms about attractiveness for female actresses. Meaning, I guess this person didn't really think Anya was attractive. Now, in the first season, she starts out as like a stable girl or a family. She's deformed. The family doesn't like her, abuses her, and one of the mages sees her potential and takes her and grooms her to become a mage. And during that time, Yennefer transforms her appearance to get rid of any deformities. Long story long, Anya Chalotra is an attractive woman. The fact that the casting director wanted to challenge societal norms on attractiveness, I don't know what this person considers attractive. Look her up. If you go on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, Anya Chalotra, who plays Yennefer, you tell me. Normally attractive? Exotically attractive? Not like, I don't know. I don't know what this person was thinking, but just something that I wanted to throw in there. So let's bounce back to sports real fast, just because I found the Sean Payton, Nathaniel Hackett, it wasn't a dispute because it was really one-sided interaction. I loved it. I absolutely loved Sean Payton calling it like it is. Maybe it's because I'm Italian and I'm an uncomfortable truths type of person. I bite my tongue when I need to, but I'm a straight shooter. I kind of call it how it is, and I love when people do that, especially when it makes me laugh. And if you didn't hear, so Sean Payton, now head coach of the Broncos, was asked questions. He didn't proactively take shots at anybody. He was asked questions and answered, and some of it was in the light of defending his players, especially quarterback Russell Wilson, who had a terrible year. Took shots at last year's Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett, who's now the Jets offensive coordinator. And here are some quotes from Sean Payton. Quote, "It doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed. And it happened here. Part of it was their own fault relative to spending so much effing time trying to win the offseason, the PR, the pomp and circumstance, marching everybody around, and all this stuff." Now remember, they traded for Russell Wilson. There was rumors that Russell Wilson had his own parking spot and office and was treated differently. And you could see that happening with someone like Nathaniel Hackett, who is a first-year head coach and really doesn't have the gravitas, track record, or authority that a Sean Payton does. And it's not that Russell Wilson was ruling the roost. He very much so played within the system that Nathaniel Hackett instilled, and it was a terrible system. But let's go back to Sean Payton. Quote, "Everybody's got a little stink on their hands. It's not just Russell. It was a poor offensive line. It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. That's how bad it was." So as Nathaniel Hackett was the head coach, you could take that as a direct shot on him, but that could also be the entire coaching staff. He's saying that there's a lot of people to blame. When you're, what were they, 4-13, 5-12? When you're that bad, it's not any one person's fault. And this is what Payton had to say about Wilson. Quote, "That wasn't Wilson's fault. That was the parents who allowed it. That's not an incrimination on him, but an incrimination on the head coach, the GM, the president, and everybody else who watched it all happen." So Nathaniel Hackett, you're, I think, 40 years old, so you're not one of these snowflake millennials who can't take tough talk, but just know also he went after general manager George Patton, who's still with the team president Damani Leach, who's still with the team, and CEO Greg Penner of Walmart fame, who obviously owns the team. So he didn't just single you out, although you were the worst of the four, given your head coaching decisions, what you were doing offensively, what we were trying to make Russell Wilson do. You were trash. It was like almost like warmed over trash. Walking by a dumpster in Hoboken on a hot summer night. That's the kind of putrid stink you put out, Nathaniel Hackett. And if Sean Payton's going to roll back his comments, I'm not going to, because you were, and you owned up to it. That's great. But just because you own up to something doesn't mean that other people can't say, hey, you know what? You were garbage and you should probably never be a head coach again. And thank God you have someone like an Aaron Rodgers endorsing you, because how much of an offensive coordinator were you really in Green Bay when it was Mike LaFleur that was calling the plays anyway? So let's go back to Denver. Last year they scored an NFL low 16.9 points per game. Russell Wilson posted career lows for touchdown passes with 16, passer rating 84.4, and a career high 55 sacks. He was not letting Russell Wilson be Russell Wilson. Anybody that watched games, he almost had an invisible leash or a shock collar on Russell Wilson, not allowing him to run or create things outside of the structure of the pocket. That's not Russell Wilson's game. He's too old to revert, to being a pocket passer. If you are a good head coach and you are a good offensive coordinator, you build the offense around your star's skill set. You don't try to fit the round peg into a square hole. And that's what Nathaniel Hackett did. And that's why he's not the head coach of the Broncos anymore. And, he's just calling plays now for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is like the de facto offensive coordinator of that team. They go as far as Aaron Rodgers goes. If you swap out Nathaniel Hackett with any other competent offensive coordinator, the Jets will be the same team this upcoming year. Nathaniel Hackett is nothing special at all. But here's Hackett's response to what Peyton said. As a coach's kid, we live in a glass house. We know that. We all live in different rooms. We all have a key for it. It's one of those things. There's a code. There's a way things are done in that house. This past week, it's frustrating and it sucks, but we're all susceptible to it. The things you do, the mistakes you make, it costs you time on the field. It costs you your job, all those things. And I own all that stuff. That's a fact. I've got no excuses. Yeah, he's a big man that he owned up to it. Like someone like in Urban Meyer, I'm still not sure if he ever owned up to being such a dipshit with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So there is something to be said for owning up to what you were, but it doesn't take away the fact, again, that he sucked. And it's okay that the new head coach can look back and say, you know what, the previous regime sucked, and we're going to do things differently and better. And now Sean Payton is walking it back. He did say, he's like, I feel like I had my analyst hat on more so than my head coaching hat. And those are things that I shouldn't have done. I don't know. But the Jets are going to play at Denver week 5. So, the media is going to have a field day with that leading up to that game. But again, I have no problem with the comments. He is speaking truths, and it's kind of one of those things with, that I often say, like, which one of the true things that I said did you not like or got under your skin? I know there's a way of saying things, but I loved how Sean Payton said it. He put his foot down. He's not going to have the nonsense. It sucked last year, and it's not going to suck this year. Love it. So lastly, but not least, Elon Musk's X rebrand of Twitter. Now, if you're not on Twitter, and you're probably better off if you're not, he has gotten rid of the little bird icon and replaced it with X. Right now, it is still called Twitter. I'm not sure what the long-range goals are for this X rebrand. But in case you guys weren't aware, this thought of calling something X is not new. Back in 2000, when Elon Musk was still balding, he was the CEO of the company that owned PayPal and wanted to change the name to X.com. Here's the quote from a book about Elon Musk during that time. Quote, PayPal had become a trusted brand name, like a good pal who was helping you get paid. Focus groups showed that the name X.com, on the contrary, conjured up visions of a seedy site you would not talk about in polite company. Musk was then ousted as CEO, but did make $176 million when eBay acquired PayPal in 2002. This X.com thing, research also showed that people thought it was a porn site, which is not hard to understand or out of the realm of possibility, but he's bringing it back. He said that he has some nostalgia, some heart for this X brand. But what he's doing to Twitter, based on that quote that I read, PayPal has become a trusted brand name. I wouldn't say Twitter is a trusted brand name, but it is a household brand name. And when he bought the company, he bought a brand, not just a platform to do what he wants. And it sounds like he wants Twitter or X or whatever to become a money app, a banking app, almost an all things for all people type of a service. But he's damaging the brand. He's damaging any sort of brand value, goodwill, recognition by changing its name, but changing its name to something cold, a single letter, things that in the past have made people think of porn websites. And since Musk has taken over in October, it's been almost a year now, Twitter is now worth a third of what it was worth, the $44 billion he paid for it. It's worth about $14.5 billion now. And ad revenue is down 50%. And no matter how much he wants to sell blue check marks to people for, I don't know what it is, $75 or something like that, he's not going to make up all this lost money, stock price, revenue, etc. I don't know what his end game is. Sometimes people that are really smart and are a visionary think they are smarter or more of a visionary than they actually are. But to purchase Twitter, can more than half of their employees sink the value, have advertisers running from them like their hair's on fire. What are you doing? I mean, I know he's rich enough that this could be his little social media playground and not really worried about what happens financially. But come on. And this X idea, he has inserted it into something else. SpaceX. Now, that might be a bit more understandable, if the X is short for exploration, like space exploration. Okay, fine. But he's hung up on the letter X for whatever reason. Focus group said it's not a good idea. To me, it seems cold. I think to other people, you don't want to, he built the SpaceX brand, and that's fine. But to devalue a well-known brand and company with your wish list or your letter name that you have a soft spot for is very unintelligent. It almost feels spontaneous, like there wasn't a lot of thought put into this. And if there was a lot of thought put into this, that's even worse. But it seems also juvenile for that letter. X by itself is not a bad letter, right? There's X-Men, there's X-Force, X marks the spot, xylophone, X-rays, as a lead letter, it's not a bad thing, but it does, especially the way that they've developed the logo, connote adult seediness pornography. And to that end, to me, it feels like Elon Musk, for as intelligent as he is, for as visionary of a person as he's become with what he's done with Tesla and not only electric cars, but, home standby, generators and the electric push. Doesn't he also seem like a 12-year-old that still thinks the number 69 is kind of funny? Like someone says 69 in a meeting and you could see Elon Musk giggle. I don't know. Whatever happens with Twitter, I am unfortunately on it, but mainly for this podcast just to promote it. But it is, in a lot of ways, a cesspool of people and their opinions and hate and bullying and whatever. Not that changing the name of it would help it or hurt it in terms of the clientele, but the perception of it, I don't think, is going to get any better. And that concludes the podcast for this week. I want to thank you, as always, for listening, for taking time from your busy schedule and lives to listen to not only 49er content, but plus content as well. We will be back again next week, either Wednesday or Thursday, for the next edition. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.